All right. Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Tonight is Wednesday, August 18th, 2021. This is your evening tropical update, where tonight we continue to watch two storms in the Atlantic Basin. We have what is now the second hurricane of the Atlantic season, which is Hurricane Grace, located in the Western Caribbean. She is moving towards landfall along Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula tonight, and eventually forecast to make a second landfall on Saturday morning along Mexico's mainland. We're going to hit her quickly, and then we're mostly going to chat about Tropical Storm Henri tonight, southwest of Bermuda. The system forecasts are starting to change on this. It's starting to move closer and closer to the New England region. And today it got a lot of buzz. It's starting to really pick up on national attention that, hey, that region may have a storm to deal with later this week. There's a lot of crazy hype and stuff. So we're going to try to cut through all that and get you what you need to know, because no doubt this is going to be a lot of clickbait for a lot of dishonest people. So let's go ahead and start with Grace real quick down here in the Caribbean tonight. Biggest thing with Grace is that the system was intensifying since it left Jamaica and the Grand Cayman Islands last night. However, Grace this evening is struggling with dry air. It looks like Grace may be capped off. Infrared satellite presentation still shows a nice little core, but there is definitely evidence that dry air is beginning to sneak into this storm. I think this satellite is actually a little bit behind. We'll see if we can get this to Okay, so yeah, so the satellite data is a little bit behind this evening. This is from a few hours ago, but there is a finger of dry air beginning to ingest into Grace. And I actually saw the later satellites a little while ago on the sloop, and the dry air had fully worked into the core of the storm. So it looks like a finger of dry air is probably capping Grace off, and she likely is going to level off in intensity tonight. She's an 80-mile-an-hour hurricane. Probably going to stay about there, that dry air invading the core of the storm, and she's quickly moving to the west-northwest. So landfall will be, in a couple hours, like, by midnight to 2 a.m. It's probably shore. So Grace likely to landfall as a Category 1 hurricane tonight. Hurricane warnings up in the red there for the east coast of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. Tropical storm warnings in blue for most of the north and west coast of the peninsula, as well as a little bit south of the hurricane warned areas, as we think Grace will return to a tropical storm since she's not far from a tropical storm already. She'll definitely weaken over land, since she'll be over land for about 8 to 10 hours. And then we expect her to move out into the Bay of Campeche in the southern Gulf of Mexico on tomorrow, or by tomorrow afternoon. Excuse me. And back over warm water and light wind shear, she looks to probably intensify again to some degree, probably regains hurricane status, and then landfalls around 2 a.m. Saturday in the mainland of Mexico. But thankfully, pretty much a large ridge of high pressure over the coast of the Gulf Coast will be keeping her well south of Texas and steer her straight into Mexico. So definitely an issue for people down there, no doubt. But hopefully local authorities are handling that. And if you're down there, you're in the path, make sure you're preparing, because it's still going to be a hurricane. But thankfully, Grace probably won't be anything too surprising. Even in the second landfall, probably still a Category 1, Category 2 hurricane. GFS still indicates that dry air may still be near Grace, although probably less likely to interrupt her on her second leg. But besides some last-minute heroics before landfall Friday night, Grace is pretty much on schedule and not going to impact the eastern United States. So we're going to go ahead and switch gears to Tropical Storm Henri, the much ballyhooed storm tonight south of Bermuda. So even follow along with the videos, we've had a lot of forecast change with Henri. 2 days ago, I told you, oh no, it's going offshore. Don't worry about it. Nothing to worry. Yeah. Well, weather does whatever it wants. And the big thing with Henri is it has intensified a lot more than we thought. Okay, this system was is still under the effects of northerly wind shear. There's still northerly winds aloft pushing down on Henri. You can see that again, just kind of like on Grace there. The satellite presentation for the cirrus clouds is flat. These little wispy clouds are trying to extend northward, and they're getting basically shoved back down because in the upper levels of the atmosphere there are winds aloft, kind of shearing Henri. However, water is anomalously warm here right now. This is above average water temperatures, and it's pretty warm. It's about as warm as what you'd find down by the Bahamas or in the Caribbean Sea. It's not as deep, but it's still pretty warm. So Henri has been able to use that along with some decently moist environment, mid-level air, and has intensified. So what's happened is the forecast track for Henri, which if I pull you the right one up, has shifted south and west. It keeps shifting south and west. The storm was supposed to loop around Bermuda and just fly on out to sea because it was supposed to remain weak. Well, it didn't do that. It got stronger, and that northerly wind just kept pushing it south and west, south and west, south and west, and now it's way down here by 30-degree north latitude instead of being up by like 32, 33 where it was supposed to be. So you have this problem now that the system is going to be a lot closer to land when it begins this curving phase. And now the steering flows around this region going in towards the weekend have changed, and now they may be able to pull Henri closer to shore or onshore. So let's go ahead and dispel a myth or two right now, because this is what got everybody concerned. So this is the GFS model. I'm going to kick it back to this morning. This is the 6Z run of the GFS. These models run 4 times a day. They calculate everything and rerun every about 6 hours or so. And the GFS this morning showed a solid hurricane moving right into Long Island in Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, etc. Um, right here on this is valid Sunday night. So Sunday afternoon, Sunday night. So people saw this, they took the screenshot, and they were like, "Oh God, there's a giant hurricane coming for the New England area." The other thing people are saying is it's going to be like Superstorm Sandy. Remember, Sandy was a $70 billion disaster in 2012 when this this sort of thing happened. You had a storm that came up the coast and then turned into land. It was a very big forecast problem until it made landfall. The difference was Superstorm Sandy occurred late in the year. It occurred, I believe, in October or late September, and there was a large upper level weather system troughing down, and you had a hurricane run into a nor'easter. Is basically kind of what it was, in for layman's terms, a hurricane slapped into a nor'easter, and you had a ton of cold air, a ton of hot air, and you made this massive mess of a storm. Henri is not that at all because there's no upper level weather system. There's no big upper level weather system to play with this. The jet stream is well off to Canada. There's going to be a disturbance over this region on Monday or Sunday night into Monday, but it's not going to be a strong one. So this isn't going to be Sandy. Even if it does eventually come ashore, it won't be Superstorm Sandy. It won't be Hurricane Sandy. So let's try to get that out of the way because I hate being one of these clickbait nonsense sites that are just going to use this for just ridiculous hype when it's not necessary. But at the same time, we need to understand that this could actually be a significant strike in an area that doesn't typically get a lot of these. I mean, New England is not a stranger to hurricanes. They only get them every 5 to 10 years. So could Henri be a hurricane when it actually hits, or if it's going to hit at all? Let's start with, is it going to hit at all? As Hurricane Center's forecast this evening, the tracks have shifted significantly west in the last couple cones, and you can see now Henri is forecast to be a tropical storm somewhere near the Massachusetts coastline on Monday. Now, this is the Hurricane Center's official cone. The cone is based off of track error at each day. So the cone only shows where the center of the storm could be. So the little dot that is the center of the storm, which is somewhere in here, that little dot could be anywhere, in that cone within that day. It has nothing to do with the size of the storm, the impacts of the storm, yada yada. So that's something that often gets miscommunicated. So what this really tells you is there's about a 50% chance it could be close enough to directly impact land, and there's about a 50% chance it stays offshore. That's what this cone says. So it's not like we're guaranteeing a tropical storm or a hurricane is going to strike the New England coastline tonight, or on Monday. We're just saying that, hey, odds have come up a little bit. Okay, well, why is that? Well, Henri is going to stay on this kind of westward motion for the next couple of days. It's going to start turning Friday night into Saturday morning and should be up by the Carolinas on Sunday. Okay, so let's go ahead and pick up right there because that part of the steering forecast is pretty certain. Here's where it gets interesting. Okay, so I'm gonna switch you over to this Earth, the old school, this upper wind map. I don't like this for like actually forecasting hurricanes because it doesn't initialize well, but it's very illustrative of what the atmosphere looks like. So we're gonna start from the top of the atmosphere down and explain to you what's going on. So this is Henri. This is off the coast of, for reference, this is North Carolina, the Outer Banks, Florida. You kind of can see the map outline now. New York, Massachusetts area. So you got your bearings, right? So this is where Henri is. It doesn't show up very well because we're way up in the atmosphere. We're near the top of where wind occurs in the atmosphere, okay? In the upper levels, there's going to be a disturbance over the Great Lakes that's going to slide down towards the weekend. So you have a ridge of high pressure way up into Canada, and you have this, what we call a cutoff low or an upper level low kind of trapped under the ridge. And this low is just kind of migrating along, okay? Henri is coming up, and in the upper levels, he's being tugged towards the coast. You can see the mean steering flow around this low looks like this. So he wants to follow that low towards the coast. This is kind of where that strike is. Okay, we go down to still high up, but not super, super high up. The steering flow is a little more this way. It's like kind of 50-50. Okay, we go to the low levels of the atmosphere. We're going to 850 millibars. This is 5 to 10,000 feet up or so, roughly. Big high over the Atlantic, nothing really over the Great Lakes because this disturbance that you just saw is only in the upper levels of the atmosphere. So in the low levels, Henri is being tugged away from the coast. So the whole rub here is if Henri is strong, then he is taller. The taller the storm is, the more it feels this flow. So if Henri is in fact a hurricane, he's more likely to want to come towards the coast. If Henri is weaker and shallower, a shorter, less tall storm, it gets pulled by these winds more. Okay, you think about it another way, here's your ocean surface. If Henri is weak and upper level winds are pushing him this way, low level winds are pushing him this way, he doesn't feel these, so he just goes this way. Same situation, here's your ocean, but Henri is now tall, same winds, he's going to move off more like this because the upper level winds are pushing the storm more. That makes sense, and maybe this explanation is too much. But what the crux of the argument is here tonight is if Henri stays as strong, if he doesn't weaken much at all, which it doesn't look like he's really going to, then you do have a storm that could track towards the coast. So that's what we're going to have to watch out for. Henri's over pretty warm water. It's over 29 to 30 degrees Celsius water. It's not boiling hot, but it's plenty warm enough, especially in this little patch he's in right now, where it's closer to 30. But this is the Gulf Stream, okay? This goes up all the way into, notice how this curves more off the coast of like Virginia and Maryland. So water warm enough to support a hurricane is basically circled in yellow, okay? Yellow and down is water warm enough to fuel an intensifying hurricane, okay? The greens are, you know, a hurricane that moves over that can kind of be stable or weaken just a little bit, and then anything colder is like, no, you're done. So there's a really sharp cutoff here as Henri approaches of colder water. This is likely to induce some weakening. So notice how the Hurricane Center on Sunday kind of has a hurricane here, and then by Monday it has it slowing down and it has a tropical storm. So Henri is not only not going to slam into the coast, unlike Sandy, it's also going to approach kind of slow, and that's going to give it time to soak up that colder water and hopefully weaken it a little bit. Again, the Sandy didn't do that. Sandy didn't care about the cold water because Sandy was being fueled by the jet stream. She didn't give a crap what the water could have been 1 degree. She didn't care. But Henri will care because he doesn't have anything else helping him along. He's got to do normal hurricane stuff to get ashore, whereas Sandy was just a monster. It's not comparable. So, latest tracks from the hurricane models do show that some are leaning this way. If you look at the ensemble models, we also see that the European needs to be disregarded right now. The European doesn't even know the storm's here, so it's not really doing well. The Euro doesn't have some of the inputs that the GFS has for tropical systems. The Euro doesn't even think Henri exists right now, so yeah, grain of salt with this, if at all. GFS is what I'd probably focus on, and honestly, the GFS has about 40% of its members that have a pass close enough for a direct hit. And you notice too, a lot of these come up to the coast and then they begin to curve away. So not only is it possible that Henri could just come right up and run into the land, it could also just come right up to the coast and then sit there and then eventually get picked up and move out. Because if we go up another couple of days, we go back to the high levels and we go up to where this is actually here on this run, eventually what's going to happen is there's more of the jet stream coming, and this is eventually going to go ahead and punt him back out to sea. The question is, does it actually go ashore and then get punted, or does it come to the edge of the coast and then get punted, or does it just kind of wander further offshore and then get punted? And that's kind of the rub of what we're looking at this evening. So bottom line with Henri is, yes, it is a threat. I don't want to play it like it's not a threat at all. A strong tropical storm moving into this region is still a big deal. There's a very susceptible coastline for flooding and things like that, but it's also being billed as like the next Sandy and some crazy stuff, or Bob from 1991 or 1992. Probably not the case in either solution. Henri does not appear that's going to be that strong, but there's some things to watch. If it's a pretty strong hurricane off the coast here, which it could be, wind shear is holding this thing down right now. But a day or two, there's going to be a handoff before it turns where there's going to be some pretty light wind shear and warm water. Henri may become a pretty good hurricane. It may be a solid category 2 or so hurricane on its way northward. So the stronger it is down here, the more it has to weaken before it makes landfall. And again, the stronger it is, the more it wants to turn. So tracking Henri's intensity in the next couple of days is going to be a big deal. It's going to get more shear on it and then probably lower shear, and then it's going to start getting influenced by cold water. So there's definitely some technicalities left to go. Bottom line with Henri is just to keep an eye on it. If you live in the New England area, keep a close eye on this one. But hopefully you understand a little bit more about what's going on, and hopefully some of that extra ridiculous height maybe is tuned down a little bit. So we will be back tomorrow with more on Henri and Grace as she moves through, and we'll definitely keep you updated on the storm as it keeps going and through the weekend and up to landfall, or hopefully no landfall. So until then, I appreciate you guys watching, and have a good one.